Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. Based on kind of everything you just said, who are, in your opinion, some of those coaches that are transformational like that have some of those attributes you talked about, that we can follow, on social media, or even watch videos or reach out to? Who are just some of those names that come up in your mind?
This first one, it sounds funny for me to say this, but I feel like I have to say this now because I'm to the point now where I act like I'm not old, but I am getting old. And people who are under me, I teach at both the master's level and the undergraduate level, several coaching classes and basketball classes. And I will mention the name John Wooden and people just stare at me.
Oh,
And you're taking a basketball class and you don't know who John Wooden is. Like, I don't understand that. And people our age, like, that sounds silly. Like, you shouldn't even have to mention that. But there are people who don't know oh yeah, didn't he win a lot of championships before? Or like he was a UCLA coach, or most of them don't even know he was a UCLA coach. But you want to talk about like a transformational leader, because of, again, my academic background and that kind of thing. Like, there was a research report that was done by Gallimore, and I can't remember who the other guy was. They went in and observed his practice and basically coded everything that he said throughout that practice, and then took that and then basically applied it to teaching principles that we're still using today. They're just foundational for teaching. And a lot of the things everything that he does was intentional. And a lot of the things that he would say to them were to invoke a response, even in, like, he, would get after one guy and then a different guy, he would use a different method. And, that was intentional. And some of it is obvious, and some of it is just like, man, that he was ahead of his time. So from that perspective, like, read the obvious books, like the, Wooden, or They Call Me Coach, but I've already mentioned one of them. It was one that was authored by Swin Nader, who was a really good friend of his. One of his former players. I actually had him on the podcast, like, phenomenal guy. But he wrote a book, the one that I mentioned that you haven't taught until they've learned, something to that extent. I think I butchered it, but that's another one that's like phenomenal, that gives you an inside look at, like, there was a method to everything that he did. And again, there was a culture that was there. And you read those books and you'll quickly find out, like, what that culture is. And guys came in and bought into it, and the ones that didn't, he didn't kick them out. He kind of worked with them, I think, was another key thing about who he was. But like, really dig into who he is. Don't just, oh yeah, I've heard of him, or, oh yeah, I know a little bit about him, or I know he won. But if you dig into, like, what he did, is just phenomenal. So he would be one. You've mentioned some of the other ones. I think Brian McCormick was way ahead of his time on you read the stuff that he wrote and you're like, oh yeah, like, I'm hearing a lot about that. That's a lot. Look at the date, open the book to the front cover and see the date that he wrote that. He was writing that 10 or 15 years ago, before anybody was talking about any of that kind of thing. But he's one that, for teaching, probably your audience has heard of, like, Doug Lemov's book, a Teacher's Guide to Coaching. Isn't,
I think that's it.
Yeah. But that one is phenomenal. I've gotten a lot of reviews from that. So those kinds, there are a lot of, because Twitter has revealed a lot of hidden gems that I think that we look at, like, the big names, but some of the best coaches are coaching at Division III and NAIA schools and high schools. If you're not following Coach Michael Lynch on Twitter, like, you need to stop listening to this right now and open your Twitter account and, like, go follow him. Like, there are some phenomenal coaches and phenomenal people. And as we were talking before we got on here, I've had the opportunity just through like a podcast to like talk to these people, and it's not just their Twitter accounts that are great. Like, they're great people, and you can tell that they have goals beyond winning basketball games. And I think that those people are the ones that are making the biggest difference, and are doing the most with what they have. Sometimes I know we still a lot of times will judge a guy. We'll go, well, what was his record this last year? Oh man, he stinks. He hasn't won any championships. They never win anything. But you dig into it a little bit and you're like, wait a minute, he's at this school working with this, and he's getting that kind of talent or that kind of output with that kind of talent. Like, he is phenomenal. 500, like, he should be winning one game a year. Those are the kinds of guys that I found that are a lot of times the really truly transformational guys. They're taking players who maybe are average and helping them become better people, which is helping them become better basketball players. So don't always look for the wins and the losses. Look at for, like, again, Twitter's allowed us to do this, is to follow people over a long period of time and see like who they really are. Reach out to those types of people if you have the opportunity to, because most people are willing to give time to you and talk to you a little bit. But
you're proof of that, man, for sure.
I appreciate that. But I have never had a original thought in my life. I'm a very, very, very good thief, and just start putting things together. You see on Twitter, like anything else on social media, you see the best of it, but there have been a lot of failures behind it. And I think that's another one too. Like, people who have failed, and we hear about all the great stories, and that's typically what sells a good podcast. But I've toyed with the idea of having a podcast that had something to do with just tell me about all of your failures and give us a real sense of how things actually work, and then tell me how you responded to it.
What a great question.
For most of us, that's how coaching goes most of the time. And, I think that we all say that you can learn the most from losing, but none of us wants to actually do it. We just want the other guy to lose so we can learn from him. So maybe look for some losers out there as well. You can learn from them too.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.